these are where the 10s are, and these are where the 1s are. So if I want to buy, I always go like that.
Yeah.
If I want to sell, I always go like that.
Okay.
And if I want to buy 25, I buy 25. The supply and demand components really all come together here on the floor. All of what you're hearing in the geopolitical arenas, all of what you're hearing in the demand side of gasoline and the supply side of perhaps rigs shutting down or more rigs coming online, all of that information gets really condensed into a settlement price at the end of the day.
Okay.
And that is what people use as a benchmark to set the price from crude oil to gasoline to heating oil to natural gas.
So everything that influences that supply and demand, it could be a storm.
It could very well be a
fire.
storm.
It could be a...
It could be a catastrophe like an earthquake.
Right. What impact does oil price have on the overall economy?
It, to me, has the biggest impact of any commodity there is, and that's why it's of such global importance, political importance, and down to the nuts and bolts, guy in the car, guy in the truck importance.
Oil and the economy are intertwined. In fact, 6 of the last 7 global recessions were preceded by a spike in the price of oil. And that is driven fundamentally by supply and demand. So where will future oil supply come from? Offshore is the fastest growing production area, so I decided to go see Perdido, the deepest water platform in the world.
Starting one.
Perdido is a very long flight for a helicopter, so everyone going out first has to do Hewitt, helicopter underwater escape training.
And step off. Squeeze in tight, make it hurt.
They reassured me if my helicopter crashed, I wouldn't need any of this, because I probably wouldn't survive. But if you do an emergency landing on the water and then sink, Hewitt teaches you how to get out.
Everybody ready?
Yeah.
Ready inside.
Stand by position. Brace for impact. Brace.
Hewitt was a reminder we're headed into a remote and dangerous environment. The Perdido platform is more than 2 hours from shore by helicopter and could power 1.7 million people per year.
Chris, where are we?
So right now we're 200 miles south of Galveston. We're on what's called a spar, and a spar is basically a can, a floating can if you want to think about it.
So the can's held down by a
big weight.
Okay.
And it's like a buoy. It's just floating there.
So this is the deepest water platform
Deepest water
in the world.
We're in 8,000 feet of water,
8,000 feet.
and we're producing, and we have the rig on board so we can work on the wells as well. The spar rig, which is straight above us, has access to 22 wells directly beneath the spar.
How long did it take to get this facility in place? I mean, from the first time you guys decided, hey, some geologist like me says, we're gonna drill here.
First of all, we have to decide you're right. From the time we purchased the lease to the time we got first production in March, it's 14 years.
14 years. What's this cost?
You know, several billion dollars.
Several billion dollars.
Yeah. So this is the brains of it. This is the control room. This is where we'd control the movement of the spar.
Gotcha.
So we actually have one of our engineers in New Orleans that we're connected to. So if we have a problem, we can actually use people from onshore to help support us.
That seems like a pretty critical and important function then.
As the platforms we're getting to are more and more remote, I think it's more critical. It's tough to get help out here if you needed it.
I mean, fresh on the minds of people, of course, is the Deepwater Horizon accident. Describe for us how you see that incident and what Shell's been doing to make sure that those kinds of things don't happen.
I think it taught us all a lesson. And what we've seen now is a group of companies basically create the tools needed. So we have the subsea equipment ready to respond to a blowout event.
Okay.
Other than that, I think we can use remote monitoring. If we identify issues or problems, we can help respond to those quickly.
Right.
Shell has never had an incident in any of their deepwater fields.
Yeah.
Knock on wood, but
Yeah, no,
but not just knock on wood.
Right.
We take a lot of steps to do that. A very good
Yeah.
safety record, but it only takes one. The human element's still there. We've got lots of really good equipment that protects us. But if things line up just right, terrible things can happen. So you do your best to make sure that those things don't happen. Sure.
It's true that in 60 years of offshore drilling, accidents like Horizon have been extremely rare. But as we push into more challenging environments, here and around the world, the risk will increase. Future oil supply will be hard. But supply is just half the equation. What about demand? I went to see the Richmond refinery, which powers 3 million people per year.
Gasoline is about 50% of what we make, and there's many different grades of gasoline depending upon the season and where they're being sold. Jet fuel is the second largest product we have. It's about 20% of our product slate, and then diesel fuel.
So mostly fuels and certain kinds of lubricants and things like that?
Yep. We ship product over to a marketing terminal, and the trucks that will deliver right to gas stations will pick up from the marketing terminal. We'll also ship product by pipeline. It goes to the airports around here locally, or it goes throughout the state by pipeline.
Richmond makes 25% of the gasoline and nearly 70% of the jet fuel for the Bay Area. It's something like a power plant for transportation, taking the energy and oil and distributing it through gasoline.
It's not often recognized, the incredible energy that you can put into a volume with gasoline. It has 4 times the energy density of liquid hydrogen. The stuff that we put into rockets, this fuel has such enormous technical advantages that displacing it, we've seen, is not easy.
It's a miracle.
Yeah.
Think about it. You can go 350 miles on a tank of gasoline. 350 miles, a whole family in a 2-ton automobile based on a tank that's just this big.
Right.
And then there's not even any residue.
Yeah.
There's no ash. It's all gone, and you fill it up again. You can fill it up in 3 or 4 minutes. It's truly a miracle. It's very hard to replace.
The maximum size ship here at the Richmond Long Wharf is 750,000 barrels a day of product.
750,000 barrels.
Correct.
The U.S. consumes about 20 plus million barrels of oil a day.
That's correct.
So you're looking at about 1/30 of the daily consumption of crude oil and gasoline on one tanker.
Correct.
It's like maybe 45 minutes of what we consume in this country on that big boat. That's a lot.
Puts it into perspective, doesn't it?
That's a lot of consumption. But it's amazing how much demand there is. And that's just for the U.S. The world uses a tanker every 13 minutes. And as population and development increase, so will demand. Combine that with difficult supply, and future oil will be expensive. Around then, I was asked to speak at an energy conference in India. In many ways, India is more beautiful than I had imagined. And more exotic. And more crowded. There are people everywhere, in nearly constant motion. vehicles at every speed, on every road, at pretty much every hour of the day or night. Millions of new drivers finding new ways to fit in too few lanes. India already makes more cars than the US, and nearly all of them running on oil.
Thank you.
It's very appropriate this meeting is in India. India will soon become the largest populated country in the world. It's growing, and the demand for energy is growing. And so many of the things that India does are going to lead the world as we move forward.
All of a sudden, you're creating a new middle class in China and India. That's hundreds of millions of people who don't yet have cars, but know what cars are and know they want them. And so as their incomes rise, their consumption of automobiles is going to rise, and that means the world's consumption of fossil fuels, particularly oil, is going to rise.
Right.
But also their demand for electricity is going to grow. One of the scariest statistics I've heard in the time I've been in this job was told to me by an Indian energy official. He said, you know, we have 600 million people in this country without access to electricity today. Can you imagine providing what the challenge is? That's 2 United States. Can you imagine providing electricity for 2 United States? And they want to do it in the next, 20 to 30 years. And they'll be adding population at the same time. So, and that's going to be coal.
In 2 or 3 decades, the energy demands of India and China are expected to exceed those of the US and all European countries combined.
In terms of the carbon emissions, the U.S. will soon be a minor player in this. Most of the carbon emissions will be coming from China, India, and the developing world. We will develop carbon sequestration, but it will be too expensive. They will not adopt it. This will become a point of friction in the future, which we will not solve. And assuming the calculations are right, we will have several degrees of global warming, which we will learn to live with because there will be no alternative. Because unless it is really cheap and affordable, the developing world cannot adopt it, and we can't afford to subsidize these huge growing nations whose economies will soon be so much larger than ours.
Coal and oil, electricity and transportation. Just as it did in the West, coal will power the development of China and India, but it will not be clean. Oil demand will increase, and so will risk, and so will price. The challenge then is not just to adopt alternatives, but to maintain the benefits of oil and coal without their disadvantages, and at a price we can all afford. Can it be done?